A dark screen gave way to some sort of heavily armed fortress as intense music played. After a few more shots of the fortress, an elder dragon with very uniquely shaped wings was seen flying to the fortress at high speeds. It quickly flew through the grounds of the fortress as cannons fired at it, but missed by a massive margin. The dragon then landed and roared, unleashing a circle of strange black mist, crackling with blue energy and red lightning. Then, after a moment, large chunks of metal rose up from the ground around it and, after the beast reared onto its hind legs and roared again, the metal chunks were sent flying with a burst of the red and blue energy. "Whoa, that one looks so cool," Ruby said. "Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything with wings like that before." Coco agreed. "The closest I think we've seen to something like that is Quechawacha," Crow said. "But where is the joint that allows them to flap properly? Without that, it shouldn't be able to flex its wings enough to get lift and fly." Emerald questioned. "I have to agree with Emerald. They seem highly inefficient for sustained flight. They appear to be far better suited for gliding," Penny noted. "We'll just have to watch and listen, I guess," Summer said. Suddenly, a man was seen raising his fists into the air in excitement, text on his forehead labeling him as hunters. "Yeah, bitch. Magnets. Oh," the man cheered, pacing back and forth in excitement with the image of this new dragon superimposed in front of him. A few of them chuckled at this. "Freaking magnets. How do they work?" Nora said, earning a few more laughs. "I knew I wasn't the only one who knew the lunatic jester brigade," John exclaimed. A longsword-wielding hunter then charged towards the dragon in the desert as the dragon roared at him. "Hello then, my fellow hunters, and welcome back to Monster Lore. As today, we examine Rukodiora, the very first elder dragon discovered in the long-lost frontier, and, indeed, he is a pioneer of magnetism." Rage introduced the dragon as a group of hunters were fighting it as it flew just above the ground. And, when you think about it, magnetism is a pretty good defense against a load of people running around with stabby sticks covered in metal. Rage explained, before cutting away from the fight, showing a soda can labeled as hunters, which was then magnetically crushed with a squishy flesh sound effect. "Wow, the first one from the frontier. That's really cool," Young admitted. "Yeah, and magnet powers are pretty cool, too," Neo said. "Then, they saw the can get crushed. Especially if it actually does that," she said, letting one of her psycho grins slip. Meanwhile, everyone else was horrified by that concept. "Being crushed by the armor that's supposed to protect you. That's terrible," Velvet said, aghast. But James was on the verge of a panic attack at the idea of this dragon's power. "All of my soldiers. They all wear metal armor. I'm half metal. We'd be at their mercy. It would crush them like those cans and rip me in half," the general said with absolute terror in his voice. "It's all right, James. It's not here. And it's already a strong contender for the list of monsters to be banned from Remnant," Ashbin assured him. The beast landed and released a burst of magnetic energy. "Oh, yes. So this, then, is the pole dragon, or indeed the magnetic dragon. He was first discovered in the frontier and he was quite the colorful creation from nature. But before we talk about what he can do, let's judge him on his appearance," Rage declared cheerfully as upbeat music began to play as the beast arrived at the fortress once again. "Its magnetism is a black energy, too. Just like yours, Hira," Ruby pointed out. "The similarity is quite uncanny," Hira admitted. "Maybe it's your spirit animal or something," Ilya theorized. "A spirit animal from a different universe?" Adam questioned. "It could happen," Ilya said. A still image of the dragon was then shown. Indeed then, he fits the mold of the kind of classic elder dragon look. The skeleton, the Teostra, the Quechawacha and indeed, Rukodiora, you kinda see where the scheme is there. Rage explained as still images of Teostra and Quechawacha were shown. And he is quite the specimen. Atop his head is a trifecta of horns, 2 pointed back, 1 pointed forward. They are quite the impressive arrangement. I'm not sure I feel about the one pointed forward, or maybe if it was only that one without the ones pointed back, but it's also not the worst thing in the world and they are breakable well, 3 times. The rest of him, then, is fairly plain and understated. The black scaling is very cool. The orange highlights do indeed pop and the spikes on his joints are indeed there." Rage listed the other features of the monster he liked while showing an image of the dragon roaring on its hind legs was shown. "I do find something about the forward-facing horn a bit awkward looking," Ren admitted. "I don't really see much of a problem with it. They're likely there to protect its forehead during ramming attacks. Likely not meant as ramming weapons like Nergigant's horns, but whatever protects its head. Weiss theorized. They may not be great for flight, but I still really like the wings. Especially with the black scales. Blake said. I'm a fan of the spikes and the orange glow they have. Not to mention the yellow and orange complement the black scales very well. Cinder added. The first still image of Rukodiora was shown again. But all of this pales in comparison to the star attraction. These sweeping wings adorning his back, continuing down his tail, the spines of which, all the way to the tip, are simply magnificent. The gradient orange to yellow to an almost white, evocative of the sun, resplendent and powerful. And, indeed, it does signify that raw power. It reminds me of something along the lines of a Dimetrodon. Rage went over the design of the wings. A cartoon of a Dimetrodon was shown with a rock song playing. Dimetrodon with a sail on his back. The singer sang as an arrow trailed all the way down the Dimetrodon's sail. I gotta admit, I've always had a soft spot for Dimetrodon. Emerald admits. I know, right? That sail is just so epic. It's like a spoiler for a car, but built into their back. Young said. Ruby sighed happily with a reminiscent smile on her face. I remember seeing them in a lot of old dinosaur cartoons and books when I was a kid. Ruby recalled nostalgically. Actually, Miss Rose, while they were around during the same time, they are not dinosaurs. They are more closely related to mammals than dinosaurs. Best shown by the teeth, which Dimetrodon gets the name from having canines and incisors. And there were several species, the smallest being from mantle at only a single meter while the largest were up to 5 meters. Glinda said matter-of-factly. Summer leaned in towards Crow. I forgot how much of a nerd she could be. No wonder she was Raven's wedge girl when we were in school, she said, to which Crow chuckled. A Dimetrodon was then shown walking through a field with scattered trees. With its great, fanned back and then it flushes with blood to display a vibrant, threatening pattern to ward off aggressors. But, you know, in Elder Dragon form. And in a way, he perfectly symbolizes the frontier itself, both familiar, but so very distinctly different and his own. Rage explained as a chart showed the size comparison between a human and Dimetrodon. Oh, my. I know Miss Goodwitch just said how large they could be, but that's still quite shocking. Winter admitted. Probably because she said it in meters. Who uses meters? Roman asked. Everyone. Everyone on Remnant except Vale. Hazel said. The dragon was shown invading the grounds of the fortress once again, making metal debris surround itself. And, of course, bringing with you magnetism is quite the cool little gimmick. The host added, as hunters were seen fighting the monster in the desert again. It is said this dragon dates back to ancient times, still remaining today and still largely unchanged. Golden dust follows where it flies, glittering in the sky. He truly is, at least from afar, at least when calm, quite the pretty sight. Rage explained as the dragon roared and made a magnetic field around itself. Oh, so he's kind of like the crocodile or the shark of this universe. Emerald noted. For elder dragons, at least, I guess. There's a few monsters for a few different categories that are like that. Like the pseudo-wyverns for flying wyverns. Razara said. Still, like he said, it is a pretty sight. Blake agreed. Yeah, I'd like to see that gold dust raining down. Coco admitted. Especially if you could collect it and sell it for a decent price. Neo added, fist-bumping Roman. Nora gained a mischievous smirk at this. But I wonder, would that count as a golden shower? She asked lewdly. Nora, her teammates and Glinda all scolded her. The creature was then seen running all around the desert with metal debris rapidly spinning in a large circle around it. It likes to cause a little bit of a ruckus, attack towns and settlements as many elder dragons do. But when your battlements tend to be highly composed of metal, a magnetic dragon will make short work of them. Now, a lot of animals do interface with magnetism, but very surface level, or at least not in any kind of actual day-to-day use. The host informed them, before showing a picture of Earth's magnetic field. A lot of animals navigate with magnetism, they are able to get around using the Earth's magnetic field. From whales to birds to bees, there really is quite the collection of animals that seem to be in tune with magnetism around them. Rage explained, showing images of a whale, a pigeon and a bee. Wow, that's actually really cool. I didn't know animals were connected to the poles of the planet like that. John said. Well, as they say, you learn something new every day. I'm happy for you. I just wish it didn't take learning about dragons from other dimensions to get you all interested to learn. Weiss said to the other students. Hey, I like studying and learning, Velvet said indignantly. A clip of a pigeon was then shown. In fact, pigeons are the star of the show on that front, they seem to have by far and away the best grasp of it. And, indeed, that's why homing pigeons are a thing, that's why they are, indeed, so good at reliably navigating such long distances back and forth, carrying messages. The host informed as the pigeon looked back and forth. Oh, so that's why people used to use pigeons as messengers. I always wondered that. Ilya said. How I miss those simpler times. Ashvin said wistfully. So, then, can faunas feel the pulse of the planet, too? Young asked. At least not the ones in this room, but I can't say conclusively. You might have to ask a bird or insect faunas. Adam said. Young, I thought you learned to stop asking those questions after you asked me if faunas sniffed each other's butts. Blake grumbled. The dragon charged forward with its debris barrier once again. But weaponizing it, of course, is a step further, and it's where we must accept the suspension of disbelief that comes with elder dragons. He is electromagnetically charged, his very scales themselves are. He is not generating it per se, he is not controlling it with his horns, you can't shut him down, it's just part of his body as his blood, his bones, his flesh. And he very much is aware of that, he can scatter his scales, much like Gormagala scatters his own to generate clouds of frenzy. Rage said, the pre-elder dragon briefly being shown. Oh, gods. Not that thing again. Summer groaned as they saw the pre-elder dragon. Let's hope that's where the similarities end. Hazel said. But that's cheap that you can't take away or turn off its magnetism. You can do that for most other monsters, so why not him? Roman complained. I suppose that makes sense. Other than extreme temperatures and fluctuations in temperature, nothing really affects an object's magnetism, Penny said. Rukodiora then unleashed a beam of dragon energy from its mouth. But in this case it will magnetize that which can be magnetized upon contact. And what can be magnetized a lot of the time is a lot of the equipment hunters come well equipped with. And, indeed, this would afflict you with the magnet effect, and while this is happening, basically, you can just be thrown about the place at the will of this dragon, you can be pushed away, you can be pulled towards, you are at his mercy. And that's kind of terrifying. Imagine being able to just get thrown into an attack you otherwise were well clear of. Imagine being pushed backwards as your swing misses despite it surely about to succeed. It is quite the fearsome battlefield control, and it makes him one hell of an opponent. Rage explained as the beast let out a roar while flying to raise large chunks of metal from the ground beneath it, sending the longsword wielder flying. Okay, now that is totally cheating, Ruby complained. But, that's basically how I fight with my semblance, more or less. Pyrrha said. That just means you and the dragon cheat. One more reason it's a good choice for you. Cinder teased. All's fair in a fight to the death. It's literally war at that point. Ren said. Okay. Then just Pyrrha is cheating. Cinder couldn't help but tease again. A strange yellow and orange serpentine elder dragon was seen raising rocks with electricity. And taking a leaf out of Narwa's playbook, he can raise the very ground, the debris, the rock around him using his electromagnetic forces. Though, even besides Narwa, it is said that creatures like Rukodiora and his wind generation has an electromagnetic property. Or that Kulve Taroth herself gets her glittering cloak by a similar, yet more rudimentary command of this power. Though, that said, gold itself is not technically considered a magnetic material. It can be pushed and pulled, but it cannot be turned into a magnet itself, so the chances are high that Kulve Taroth uses a slightly different method. In fact, all likelihood, it's a quite simple burn, melt it onto back, let it solidify, it's now attached and ready to go. But, I digress. Rage explained, showing still images of Kushala and Kulve, before returning to the fight. What on Remnant was that amazing creature? Winter asked, starry-eyed upon seeing Narwa and its more, unusual features. Sister, have you gone mad? That thing was horrifying. That mouth of it was monstrous. Weiss cried out. That is the thunder serpent Narwa. Sai will probably talk about her at some point, but I can give the early spoiler she's not coming to Remnant. Katana told them. For good reason, I'd say, just look at those massive rocks she's raising from the ground. Ironwood said. But at least those are just surface level rocks she was probably just lifting because of the metal in them. Crow said. Bringing up Rukodiora made sense if its tornadoes are indeed electromagnetic, but even he himself pointed out Kultarov likely doesn't use magnetism. So what was the point of mentioning her? Glinda questioned. The dragon then knocked back a hunter in front of it with some claw swipes. Let's return to our elder dragon and what he can actually do with this ability. Well, as I said in our example, raising the ground, having the debris float around him, blocking attacks from his opponents and throwing it in return. He's also very much in favor of physical combat, claw swipes, charges, bashes, you know the elder dragon drill. The host listed the beast's tactics as a still image of it drilled into the ground. Look, I couldn't resist, okay? Rage said with an echo to his voice as everything went black. Yang and Neo got a little giggle at the drill gag. Okay, that was a pretty good one, Neo said. That was the easiest joke he could have possibly made there. Are you two that childish? Emerald questioned. Just because a joke is easy doesn't mean it can't be funny, Yang said in a surprisingly sage-like tone. The dragon then slammed down on the ground with a wave of magnetism. But he also has command over electricity itself and can generate it as an offensive option, combining it with dragon element. Yes, indeed, he commands it as do many elder dragon and, indeed, makes him a rare creature with dragon lightning in its most devastating form and, indeed, you don't want to get hit by this. Because his body exists so naturally electromagnetically charged at all times as a core part of his existence, you can't really paralyze him. You can, but he is able to slowly power through and walk forward during paralysis. This is both incredibly badass, incredibly unique and incredibly cool, but also makes it incredibly difficult to effectively damage him while you have set paralysis off. Other options, then, are much better placed at dealing with this dragon. The host informed as the dragon snapped its fangs at the hunters. What? How do you just power through paralysis? That's totally cheating. Absolutely broken, Nora complained. So, you probably noticed how it's lifting and throwing huge chunks of rubble from the ground? Well, that's not any ordinary rubble. Those are huge chunks of metal or he's ripping out from deep underground to then make fly around him at insane speeds or just launch at hunters. Katana informed them. Oh, geez. It's Nephew all over again, Summer complained. But at least Nephew was only raising priceless artifacts to the surface after they'd been buried under loose, movable sand. But this beast is raising these massive clusters of metal from deep below the ground, Glinda exclaimed. Just how strong can its magnetism be? Ironwood said in horror. The dragon took to the air to escape the reach of the hunters again. He is, indeed, quite enigmatic, a relatively new discovery, initially taken as people misidentifying Kushala and Teostra, Rage explained as the images of the aforementioned elders were shown. The image of Rukodiora was then shown again. Though, admittedly, he does look very different from them, so I don't know how much I do give credence to that, but in any case, he is still very much under research. The host declared, under research, appearing on screen with a dramatic booming sound effect. How do you confuse that for Kushala or Teostra? It looks nothing like them, Weiss exclaimed. I could maybe see it being confused with Kushala from a distance, John admitted. What Kushala have you seen that has orange wings? Cinder questioned. The demon hostesses whistled innocently at this. 2. Rukodiora was seen attacking the fortress again. And he tends to spend a lot of his time in the desert, though whether that's his natural habitat is unknown. The only other place he's been fought is while getting repelled from an assault upon a settlement fortress. Just existing around this incredibly aggressive elder dragon is bad news. I mean, he took it upon himself to literally attack the Interceptor's base, which is quite the ballsy move and generally isn't done by elder dragons of his size. That tends to fall to the really big boys that think they can get away with it, so this guy is quite aware of his power. Rage informed as the beast roared and made its debris barrier again. This thing's got guts, then. I can respect that, Crow said, giving the beast a nod of respect. Yeah, but I bet he doesn't have the guts to take me on, Yang boasted. Might be hard for you to take him on, though, if he crushes your arms with your own gauntlets, Emerald reminded her. The hunters were fighting it in the desert again. If you just simply touch him, you've got every chance of slicing your limbs off via his claws themselves, or indeed, if you manage to avoid them, you will essentially tase yourself, going completely numb and eventually passing out from the shock of it. He really is an electrified dragon, a living magnet and something truly not to be ever taken lightly. The host warned as the dragon leapt back while making huge chunks of metal rise from the ground to knock back hunters. So, still think you can take it on, Blondie? Might be hard if you get electrocuted every time you punch it, Roman said. Or worse, it would electrify her hair and make her look like a dandelion again, Ilya teased. All of this just sounds like more reasons we can't have it on Remnant. Ironwood insisted. It just sounds like more of a challenge to me, Adam declared. The hunters finally managed to bring down the elder dragon, but it does not simply end there. There is indeed Rukodiora, an overcharged subspecies that takes everything to the next level. Someone Rage explained as a tonfa-wielding hunter fought a newer version of the monster with blue lightning and magnetism. A still image was then seen. His color hue to purple and green and his body reacts to the struggle to contain the overflowing essence within him. He is commanding the thunder pole element, uniquely his and quite the potent offensive tool. It is a mix of lightning itself, but also his own mysterious power. And hunters themselves can wield it, too with his weapons, causing attacks to unleash bursts of electricity, but also bursts of black and red energy in alternation. Rage explained as the hunter was getting in a solid aerial combo against the beast. Many were amazed by this new form. Whoa, that looks awesome, several of the students said. So cool. Look at its colors. That's an epic color pattern, RWBY said. And it has lightning bolt horns and wings. Nora cheered. Not to mention, its power is quite interesting. I'd like seeing it in person, Hazel admitted. Seconded. Crow, Coco, Nora and Adam agreed. I'd like trying those weapons to use its power myself, Young said. The dragon released an orange burst of energy as it rose into the air. He, then, can release giant balls of electromagnetic energy that slowly descend to the ground, ripping and pulling everything towards it before exploding on contact as mini magnetic shrapnel grenades. Which is quite the experience to deal with. It can also do vortex-esque moves, black hole-type suction displays, you know the drill here. Rage said as the fight continued, only for the still image to drill into the ground once again. Look, again, I really can't resist. Rage admitted again with the familiar echo over a black screen. Young and Neil laughed at this bit once again. It's still funny, they said together as everyone else groaned. Weiss, I was twitching in annoyance at the bit being brought up again. Honestly, it's the same exact joke as before, why are you still laughing from it? The heiress questioned. Hey, things can be funny more than once. It's called a running gag. Repetition is the foundation of humor, Neo insisted. Yeah, the only way it could be better was if he did it one more time. 3 times works the best. Young agreed. Rukodiora was making the giant electric orb like the host explained. Essentially, imagine Rukodiora as our original, lovely Rukodiora but turned up to 11, everything he can do enhanced with some really overwhelming new moves just to make him that much more difficult. I would argue that he is a variant due to him being caused by a change in biology in the base form, but that said, he definitely is quite the step up. Rage declared as the airborne dragon unleashed a huge amount of magnetism to pull the hunter in, before landing and launching the hunter into the air with a burst of black energy. Well, variant or subspecies, whatever he is, he's awesome, John said. It is pretty neat he has his own element or whatever it is. And the blue lightning is pretty neat. Blake added. Are you guys not freaked out by the black hole attack? Ilya questioned. I mean, it is pretty shocking, but we've seen things like it before from Boltreaver Astalos and such, Blake reminded her. Not to mention, the hunters are clearly getting away from it, so it's at least manageable. Obviously dangerous, but nothing like Eschaton Judgment or Sapphire of the Emperor. Cinder added. The hunter was now fighting a spikier Rukodiora with blue wings. Though talking of step up, there is also a Zenith Rukodiora. Rage announced, showing a still image of the upgraded version. Zenith monsters are just ultra-powerful, changed versions of the original and he is definitely different in this form. The lightning running across his wings is cool, but a lot of him tends to get quite overgrown here and his display of power becomes absolute. They take the black/red lightning-esque and just run with it, to the point that they can inflict a special version of Dragon Blight that quite literally prevents a hunter from recovering health naturally. It is quite the melody to be afflicted by. These ones also have a second pair of wings on the back for added mobility, speed and power and generally, again, is everything Rukodiora can do, but absolutely massively enhanced. Rage warned as the dragon continued to attack ruthlessly, even raising a full ring of giant rocks and chunks of ore, before dropping them down towards the hunter. "That is so awesome," Ruby said. "I know, right? Look at all those spikes," Yang added in awe. "And it has 2 sets of wings. That's just epic. Wings are already awesome, so 2 sets is just double the awesome." Nora added. "That new dragon blight isn't cool, though." "That sounds terrifying," Summer admitted. "Everything about any version of this monster is terrifying," Glinda said. The original version of the monster was shown again. And that, sadly, is all there is to tell on this dragon. There is not a lot going on here, but what is here is very, very cool. There are other monsters that have electromagnetic capabilities, and we've discovered more monsters with magnetic powers, but he was the first we found to do so, and, even after discovering more that can do it, he is unarguably the king of magnetism. He is not my favorite elder dragon of the frontier visually, though again, I do adore his wings, and in terms of how he actually operates, I think it's really fantastic." Rage finished as they managed to cut the monster's tail off and bring it to the ground. "It is definitely a very interesting dragon with a nice appearance. And I wouldn't mind learning more about it. It is fascinating, but at the same time, I think it might be too much for Remnant to handle," Pyrrha admitted. "A wise decision, Miss Nikos. A certain creature or power may seem very appealing at first, but it's important to understand if that power or creature is too dangerous for the people around you, or if it poses a threat to the world as a whole. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, as it were," Ashbin said. "I mean, you're not wrong, but I feel like you of all people don't get to say that." Teko told him. "I still think it's epic and we should have it on Remnant. I wouldn't mind taking it on. And besides, I don't wear armor, so it's not crushing me like a tin can," Coco said. "Maybe, but it could still crush or pull Janduya away from you," Velvet pointed out. Katana opened her mouth to ask for their thoughts, but Ruby was in front of her in an instant. "It was so awesome. Its wings are really cool, its power is amazing. Can we please get it on Remnant?" The silver-eyed girl pleaded. The ice demon opened her mouth once again, preparing to answer, but once again, someone beat her to it. "Absolutely not," Ironwood shouted. "It would be an absolute disaster if it were on Remnant. We'd have no way to combat it, it would just use its magnetism to rip our weapons from our hands. And that's if it doesn't simply crush us in our own armor. And if it can rip chunks of metal out from deep inside solid ground so easily, pulling down our bullheads from the sky would probably be a simple feat." He ranted on all the ways the beast could endanger people. Mostly his own troops, but what he said extended past just him and his men. "I have to agree with him on this, Ruby. It's way too dangerous for the people of Remnant," Katana said. "Ah, but why? If hunters can fight it, why not us?" the scythe wielder asked. "Hunters use weapons and armor made from the bones and hide of other monsters, so it gives their gear some resistance to Rukodiora magnetism," Razara explained. "You guys, though, your stuff is just metal. So fighting Rukodiora would be hilariously one-sided. Heck, it might even just pull your weapons out of your hands and use them against you," Teko added. Many were disturbed at that idea. "Whoa, now that's a scary thought," John said. "Betrayed by my own baby," Ruby said with tears in her eyes, horrified at the thought of being cut down by Crescent Rose. But Summer was quick to hurry over and hug her daughter. There, Ruby. It's okay. It's not going to happen," she assured her. After a moment, Ruby calmed down and nodded, assuring everyone she was okay. "Okay, yeah, we shouldn't have it on Remnant," she agreed. "So, then, what did you think besides how horrifying its magnetism would be?" Teko asked. "I still think it's pretty cool. Lightning and magnets. It's like if me and Pyrrha had a baby," Nora exclaimed. Everyone looked at her in bewilderment at this. "Nora, please think before you say things like that," Ren told her. "I still wouldn't mind taking it on. As powerful as it is, it has weaknesses and ways to get around its power. Being able to do that and defeat it is the mark of a true warrior," Adam said, the other thrill seekers nodding in agreement. "Exactly. All that power just make it a worthy challenge," Hazel agreed. "Well, I do have to admit, the range and control of its abilities is quite fascinating. Being able to lightly push hunters just out of range of their attacks, or throwing them back so they are hit by attacks that would never have connected otherwise. It's quite intimidating, but also very intriguing. I hope it's given you some ideas for your own magnetic prowess, Miss Nikos," Glinda said. It most certainly has, Professor. Pirog confirmed. I'm also quite impressed by how resistant it is. Being able to power through paralysis as it did was quite inspiring. Ashvin agreed. Neo then perked up. Oh, you know, I just thought of something. Since Penny's a robot, she would be totally screwed if she fought this thing. It would either whip her around like a rag doll or just crush her into a ball of scrap. She noted, leaving everyone horrified. 1. None more so than Penny. All the more reason to not bring it to Remnant. She said. But still, if there are some monsters that will only get one member of their species on Remnant, like Amaryllis, I'm kind of surprised Pirog got a creepy spider instead of this thing. You have to admit, it suits her more. John admitted. As much as I'd rather not have any on Remnant, I do have to agree with that statement. Ironwood reluctantly agreed. Indeed. There are certain individuals that uniquely defy behavior of their species, so it's possible Miss Nikos could have received a more placid Rukodiora, especially if its behavior was altered by a reality-warping demon. Ashvin agreed. However, the ice demons were onto them. You're just saying this because of your arachnophobia, aren't you? Razara asked. I will neither confirm nor deny, the two headmasters said. Pirog glared at the two men in power with a look that clearly said shame on you as she stroked her spider's head. I am quite happy with my monster, thank you very much, she said, leaning against the Tennoceran. So, what's next? Blake asked. Well, I hope none of you have to go to the bathroom, because we're going to be seeing a lot of water next video. Get ready to take a dip with Royal Ludroth. Katana said as she started the video.